Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure for the World Tennis Conference to have two big names in terms of customized road tennis rackets and materials for tennis. We have with us Guillaume Ducret and Dieter Calle. Thank you, Dieter and Guillaume, to be with us.
Thank you.
They're going to present understanding the customization of impact on performance. Talk a little bit about Guillaume. He is a sport marketing expert. He was senior director for the global sport marketing of Technifiber. Also, he has worked with many tournaments, many ATP tournaments, being working on sponsorship, marketing, and business project. He is director of marketing and client management of LG Sport and doing a lot of projects to develop tennis. Thank you, Guillaume, to be with us. Okay.
Thank you very much.
And also talking about Dieter. Dieter has a strong experience. It's probably is one of the best guys in the world, customizing, all the tennis rackets and material for tennis. He is also main stringer of the Davis Cup team for Belgium and Fed Cup for also. He is very specialized on that, doing a lot of projects for tennis players, tennis coaches, tennis organizations. Thank you, Dieter, to be with us on the presentation.
You're welcome.
This is a very important subject, and I know that we have right now the World Tennis Conference by GPTCA and Segal Institute, coaches from all over the world, and they will enjoy for sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Fernando. So I will start the presentation, and then I will give the ball to Dieter later in the presentation when we are going to speak about customization. But first of all, I'm delighted to talk about racket and strings. Okay, so there are a lot of things to share, and I'm sure you all know some of them already. But we've tried to keep it simple, and we didn't want to bring too much data. Okay, so if some of you are interested in further information, please do not hesitate to contact us. We will be happy to help you. So let's start by the summary. So we are going to start by a basic reminder to explain what the main features, the design and string for the rackets. Then we are going to speak about the product evolution, raw materials, and impact on and influence on the rackets. And of course, then Dieter will be speaking about racket customization in terms of techniques impact, performances impact, how to drive a playtest, and then we will, provide a kind of case study about the transition between junior racket to adult racket, and then some top-level examples to help you to better understand how the ATP circuits and the WTC circuits now used to work. Okay, so if you go to the main features, we're gonna start by two characteristics. So let's start by the basics. So this reminder that will be useful to understand that the following and more detailed parts of this presentation. So the main rackets features will help you to understand the equipment's evolutions, as well as the player's needs. Okay, so we're not gonna talk about injuries or pathologies, although it's you will quickly see the link between some usual injuries you can see on court with your student, like tendonitis. So let's start by the weight of the racket. So of course we have heavy racket, which is obviously more powerful. So just a minute, I just want to move a little bit the presentation. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so of course heavy racket are more powerful than light racket because they are bigger inertia. Okay, so again, Dieter will explain you later what is it. The heavy racket will be obviously more powerful, I said, and stable during the impact. Okay, you will feel more thin impact, which lessen the vibration. Okay, so however, it will be more difficult to handle. Okay, and the player will get tired quickly. Okay, because it's a heavy racket, so it's not for everyone. However, once we have talked about weight, we also have to consider the balance. Okay, like a hammer, the balance will have an impact on the game. So again, Dieter will explain you later. So then the balance here. Okay, so the balance of course, when the racket is heavy, the balance should be light in the head, and in opposite side, when the racket is light, we should have either racket to either balance, sorry, to compensate the lack of power of the racket. So it's a thing that everybody should know. But let's go for the next step, because we have also different main features. So when it comes to section of the racket, so you have two kinds of section. You have the square racket and the round racket. Just to give you an example, I will give you, for instance, that the two big shapes are possible. The head prestige will be more square, and the bubble after drive is a round section. So you can see the different shapes of the frame. These shapes have also to be mixed with the racket beams, which can be thin or wide, which is in millimeters. Okay. So what are the main differences? So these differences are crucial, and they can make huge difference between top and recreational players. Okay. So that's something you can see when you see a frame. You can quickly understand if the frame is thin or wide, and if the shape is round or square. When I say square, it's not like a very square. It's let's say a little bit between square and round, because it's not typically square racket like wood racket. So a square, let's go this. A square racket has a longer impact, okay, because it will absorb the energy of your opponent balls. Just an example: the ball with the stick. The ball will stick with the strings, which means that if you take, for instance, a square iron stick, you could make the stick flexible. If you take a round iron stick, you couldn't move and change the how can I say, the flexibility of the racket, which means that round is stiff and square is more flexible. So only a good and powerful swing can release the ball with a good power when you use square racket, because the racket again is very flexible. This shall bring a better control to the powerful players. Okay, otherwise the ball will land short if the player does not match these requirements, and with the risk that we all know that if the ball lands short, if the player doesn't have a good technique, a good swing, then it should be probably killed in the next point. If we go back to the round section, this is the opposite actually. The impact and the time to control the ball are short because the racket is stiff, okay? And the player does not need to hit strong in order to release the ball, okay? The racket does the job as soon as the ball comes in. So basically the ball does not need to go through a launching ramp, okay? It's not like a square racket. The round section, I would say, compensate a lack of technique and power, okay? That will be very important to know, especially when we will speak about the evolution of the racket and how recreational players can improve quickly with a, not say bad technique, but with a small technique, okay, without a big and good swing. However, when we take a round section, the ball can fly outside quickly because the racket is very powerful. Okay, so between square and round section, you will easily understand the profiles of the players. Okay, because it depends of what you're looking for. So just to resume, you can see on this presentation the stiffness, the impact, the energy return, the good swing, and the technique needed, the power, and the main risk for the players. Okay, that's always the same story. If we go to the racket design, okay, that's very important to keep in mind that sometimes people are confused. Design is not cosmetic. Cosmetic is the color of the racket, blue, green, yellow, whatever. Design is different. It's a different characteristic. Design is made with a shaft, the section, and the beam. We talked about that. Design is the length of the racket, short, long racket. Design is also the head side of the racket, oversized, mid-size, okay, and obviously the stringing pattern, okay. This is design. This is not cosmetic. So when we are talking about design, you have to understand that this is the specificities that the product manager or the engineers work on to make a racket different and with different characteristics. So when we go to the shaft, Remember, we had monoshaft in the past, like a hood racket, okay? And then now we have open throat. So this evolution is very important to understand why we change this frame. The stake is to design a filling with the whole shaft from the upper grip until the head. Okay. The game has changed, and the current needs ask the racket to be more stable. And the open throat allows a wider head size. Without this open throat, we couldn't enlarge the size of the racket. Okay, so it's the reason why the monoshaft, the hood racket in the past, had a small head size. Because of the open throat, we could enlarge the head size, and the bigger head size brings more stability, more power. So we will see later. So just to compare, if you look at in squash and badminton, which are racket sport where the ball or the shuttlecock are pretty light, they don't need to have open throat. So you have, of course, some open throat squash racket, but most of the best rackets in squash and badminton still use monoshaft. Okay, this is interesting to compare. So the monoshaft has a less stability, of course, but the return is better because you have better torsion during the impact. The open throat can bring a good energy return. However, the frame has to be flexible to have a good energy return. If the frame is stiff, the ball couldn't have cannot use the energy of the opponent balls. If you look at the length of the racket, okay, you have long racket and short racket. Again, it's a question of leverage. A long racket, has more power because the inertia is bigger. The short racket has less power because the leverage is shorter. It's easy. In the maneuverability, it's a difference. Maneuverability, long racket is difficult to handle, when a short racket is easier to handle. This is why the mini tennis racket or junior racket are shorter. When you start to tennis, it's important to handle the racket. So obviously you have less power, but the priority is to bring and to teach a good technique. The fatigue, of course, it's tiring to have a long racket because you have to handle the racket, you have more power, but it takes more space to handle. And the short racket is cool. So all these characteristics must be linked to the player's body, strength, and technique skills. So it's also up to the coach to see if the players need a long or short racket and how to mix between inertia, maneuverability, and fatigue of the players. Then if you go back to the design racket, reminder, of course, everybody should know that the swing spot is the ideal impact zone, because this is where the player should hit the ball to the right spot. Okay, you have two different sizes of racket. You have oversized, which are up to 645 centimeters square or more than 110 inches square, and medium size, which are 64 centimeters square and lower. So 64 centimeters square or 110 inch square is a medium size. It's not oversized. So these characteristics have an influence on, of course, the string length, because oversized are the longer string, when medium size have a shorter string, of course. The elasticity of the string is higher with oversized and lower with the medium size because the length of the strings. So as a result, the power is bigger for the oversized and we have less power of the medium size. The swing spot, of course, is bigger and easier when the racket has an oversized head size, and is smaller and more complicated to reach with the medium and small head size. Of course, the tolerance, so it's a more forgiving with the oversized when we have to be very precise with a small or medium size, which means that you have a better spin effect when you have an oversized racket because you have more space to grip the ball when you have smaller space to grip with a medium size. So that's why, especially on clay, sometimes it's better to use a bigger head size like Rafa with 645 centimeters square, just to have a better spin. Of course, the footwork must be very good when you have a medium or small head size, because if you want to be precise, you have less space to hit the ball. So you have to be very good with your footwork. which is easier and less, I would say, complicated when you use a bigger head size. And of course, the precision should be good, because if you respect and if you have a good footwork, but the racket will be more precise with a small head size. But this medium size and a small head size is very interesting for precisions, but you have to respect all the mandatory characteristics, especially in terms of technique and footwork. Then design, you have two usual stringing patterns, okay, but this part can change a lot. There are so many combinations. I know different manufacturers use different stringing patterns, so it's wide. It's a wide topic. But usually you have two stringing patterns. You have the stringing patterns with 16 mains and 18 mains. So of course the mains, I remind you, the mains are the strings or the vertical strings. Okay, this is basically the string where they're gonna bring the spin to the ball when you hit the ball. Okay, of course, less main strings your racket have, more spin it will provide. Okay, this is because the bigger space between the strings, so the spin effect will be better with the 16 main rather than 18 mains. In the same time, the durability will be shorter with 16 mains. Okay, because the string have more freedom to move and cut each other. Okay, with the 16 mains rather than the 18 mains again. So the surface and the game style also have an influence on the player's choice. Okay, because 60 mains bring more power because you have more elasticity. Okay, because the 18 mains is a tighter stringing pattern. Oh, sorry. And especially for instance, the 16 mains is more recommended for the one-handed backhand, because the players need to bring more spin with the handed backhand, and we'll see that the 60 mains bring more power and more spin. So it's interesting when you have one-handed backhand. And if you look at on the tour, maybe Dieter will confirm, except probably Grigor Dimitrov, I think most of the one-handed backhand players use 16 mains. Okay, so obviously, if you need more control, an 18 mains racket will be more helpful, and the player will have a better contact with the ball. Okay. And then when it goes to the racket string, so basically you have 4 technologies, even though you can see only 3 on the screen, but you will see the 4th one later. String is probably the most unknown part, okay, although players take care of this product a lot. I mean, I know every time the players are very careful about string, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure that this is a part of the racket they know not very well. First of all, you have multifilaments or natural guts, okay, which are connected to each other with polyurethane, which is a resin, okay. The advantages that it keeps the tension longer, okay, that absorb most of the shot impact and vibration because of the PU inside, okay. It gives good feedback without feeling uncomfortable. It gives more depth to the ball because it's more powerful, and the ball stays longer in string bed, okay, so the higher and longer. So that's very good, especially against arm injuries, and it's a powerful and comfortable strings, okay. We will see later who can use this kind of strings. The disadvantage of the strings.
Guillaume,
yes?
Maybe one good remark. How can you recognize those strings? It's very easy. If you bite on the string with your teeth, you will see white decoloring. You will see a white spot. So this means, let's say it's the first category. It's a real multifilament with polyurethane. And the white spot is the kind of glue resin you see. When you string and you put the clamp, you see white spots. So this is important to recognize the first category, the real, let's say the real multifilaments. Yeah.
Exactly. But the disadvantages are the string move and more than the polyester strings. Okay, so they break faster than polyester strings, and of course they are more expensive. Okay, it's the most expensive strings on the market. So the target group is top competitions. Okay, especially for young players. Okay, which are very sensitive in terms of injuries, and it's an ideal string for hybrid. So there is nothing new for you. Okay. The monofilament. So the monofilament are made with polyester. Polyester is actually plastic. The string stays in its position compared to a multifilament. Okay. which comes back to its original shape. Okay, and the advantages of the polyester, it's a best durability. The strings are stiff. Okay, so when you touch the ball, which means that it helps to create the spin and have a good control, and the ball goes less into the strings. Okay, because of the more horizontal and shorter ball trajectory. Okay, with this kind of string, the players can hit harder without the ball flying out. So it brings more control, but it's a lazy strings. I will explain later. Okay, so when you feel tight, okay, when it's like 5 games old in the third or in the fifth set, that strings can help to go through and release your arm. Okay, you can go hit the ball. That brings control. So if you don't need if you're just like to push the ball, you can release the arm because the ball will stay in the court unless you hit too strong the ball anyway. There are some disadvantages, okay, because the string can break at the edge of the frame because of the stiffness. We see that polyester is a stiff strings and racket are stiff. So when you have two stiff materials, when they have a torsion, this is the left or the most flexible material which will break. Obviously, polyesters are less stiff than graphite. So sometimes that's the reason why the polyester, when you don't reach the right swing spot, the string will break because the frame cannot play, I cannot absorb this bad impact, and because the polyester is very stiff, it will break next to the frame. There is no compromise actually. So one of these disadvantages, polyester lose their tension faster than multi-filament strings. Okay, they have no elasticity. But the monos are not suitable for injury and sensitive people because it doesn't absorb vibration. The vibration goes straight from the ball to the racket, to the strings, and to your arm. It's not like a multi-filament or natural gut because there is no PU inside. This is a lazy strings again. Okay, the players must rock, so it brings more arm fatigue because you have no power. So the job is made by your arm, by your technique, by the players. So if you are not a good day, if you have to hit the ball strong, if you are not in a good day, the ball won't be very far away in the court, okay, especially at the end of the match. So sometimes the players feel they have more power, but in fact, no, just because they have to hit the ball harder for the same result and power. So because they have to hit the ball harder, they think they have more power. But in fact, if you analyze the speed of the ball with a radar, you will see it's going to be the same. Just like they can release the arm, but it's not going to be more powerful. And the target group for this kind of strings, let's take the racket, because we will suggest to take this string for the racket, which up to 290 grams, okay, which means top competition players. But we don't advise this kind of string for under 14 years old, because you know that EV rackets are powerful. Polyester is a lazy string, so you can bring a lazy string to a powerful racket. But if you put a lazy string to a light racket, you have too much lack of power, okay? And then most of all, you have vibration and you have a risk of injury. So it's an interaction between strings and frames. So kids play with a light racket, okay? And if the kids play with a light racket, it doesn't make sense to bring them lazy strings, and they have no power. So the kids have no power, the racket are light, no power, plus a string without power is too much no power to run tennis. Then you have the nylon synthetic strings. So nylon was the first synthetic string after natural gut. So it's a multi-filament or kept together by coating and not polyurethane. Okay. So the advantages is a very cheap strings. So it's a little bit more elastic than polyester strings, but it's a less elastical than multi-filament, of course. It's not durable, and the string move. Okay, so the main advantage is cheap, so it's perfect for juniors, frame, and recreational tennis players. But it's not a very performance string. Okay, and then the last technology. So now this one, it's interesting because it's an interesting option because it's a multi-filament of polyamide and polyester connected with PU, or a multi-filament of polyester altogether. So I wouldn't tell any brand, but there is 2 brands in the market. We can have this kind of hybrid in one. It's very good for this new, technology, because the advantage is the great compromise between comfort, control, and power. So you have this tact sensation when you hit the ball. You have this kind of control sensation, but without sacrificing the comfort and the power of the multifilament. Of course, it's not durable like a monofilament, but for this kind of young competitors with a light racket, but we play pretty often during the week, and they still need now a little bit more control. That's a very good transition before going to monofilaments, okay? And you can stay injury-free because of that. So I invite you to check on the market what kind of brand. So obviously I've worked many years for Technifiber, so I know Technifiber is the best brand in the world for this kind of strings. I know also the Lixilon element is a multifilament of polyester, which is very interesting also for this kind of family. So it's a very good string for teenagers. And then when you go to tension, that's also something very important. Sometimes people are confused. Sometimes people say, okay, low tension brings more power and high tension brings less power. Actually, in terms of speed, whatever the tension, the ball speed will be the same. If you string a racket at, I don't know, 22 kilos, or if you string the racket at 29, if you want to hit the ball 150 kilometers, you could do it. That's why on the tour, you have different stringing tensions between the different players, and most of the players have the same speed. So the tension doesn't affect the speed of the ball. It could affect the trajectory, the precisions, and comfort, okay? Because a high tension brings a short and straight trajectory, when the low tension brings more volume and a longer ball. That's different. Of course, in terms of precision, you have a lower precision when the tension is lower, and you have a better precision when the racket has a higher tension. And of course, the feeling on the racket is better, so you have a better comfort with the lower tension. When the tight racket is a little bit more hard, so it's less comfortable. And again, that's a question of compromise and must be linked to the player style, strength, technique skills, humidity, and altitude. Of course, if you play in Mexico, Fernando, of course, the tension will be should be higher because the ball will be flying too much because of the altitude. And if you play in Asia with a lot of humidity, same story. The ball will be flying a lot, so you have to raise your tension. So now we're going to speak about the raw materials, just like to understand the evolution impact and the impact on the game from the hood racket. So let's keep it simple. There is so many different things to details, but we can resume 40 years of technology in a short time. So from the wood racket to composite racket, okay, what happened? First of all, remember the design has changed since the hood racket. The open throat has allowed bigger head size, more stability, more spin, and new angles for the players. New materials had been used, such as glass fiber to make the racket lighter and aluminum to offer a cheaper price. So the tennis became easier to play and easier to, I would say, to buy. Because of this evolution, players could improve the technique and the game got faster, along with the swing acceleration and stability, okay? Because the racket were lighter, so the acceleration of the swing could be faster. Aluminum is still used for the kids and beginners because the 100% glass fiber swing rackets were still heavy, okay? If you look at, everybody's remember maybe this Rossignol F200, which was the racket of Mats Wilander. So the racket was lighter, but still heavy, not lighter like today, but it was still heavy and still very flexible. So there was the racket were not dynamic enough, And the only way to bring power to this racket was to bring a natural gut. This is the reason why from wood racket to glass fiber racket, in the 80s and beginning of the 90s, players had to use natural gut to compensate the lack of power of this flexible frame. Even though they had a better acceleration, a better stability, but the glass fiber is a real flexible material. Then the Industrial Revolution brought the biggest innovation. I mean, for us, the biggest innovation is graphite, and the graphite has changed again. If you look at this, the graphite brought stiffness and lightness. So basically, the racket could be lighter and more powerful. So that's why the tennis entered a new era. So remember, stiffness means power and lightness means acceleration and maneuverability. So the players did not need heavy rackets anymore, okay? And the average weight decreased, okay, which was perfect for the club players because they could learn tennis with a lighter racket and a more powerful racket. So it was also easier to play tennis even with a limited technique. So that's why a lot of people could have fun on a tennis court. In the meantime, I would say coach and scientists had improved the technique, the biomechanics had become more accurate, fitness knowledge too, and the competition has reached an upper level. Okay, so players had powerful weapons with powerful natural gut. So although they could mix the tension, so they could higher the tension to bring more control, they reached a point where it was almost impossible to control the ball. This is the main reason why the polyester entered the top level scenes, okay, from end of 90s, especially with the Guga, okay. So these strings could lower the power of this light and powerful rackets. So nowadays, some players want to bring more power and comfort in using kind of natural gut mixed with a monofilament, but you will see less and less players using natural gut with these current frames of this 21st century. It's too much power for the professionals. So I would say this is the big revolution. So coach, again, I mean, remember that the club players and juniors don't have the same needs. So polyester doesn't absorb vibration. I told you, it's a lazy strings, which has a lot of energy and strength. So don't let your student to go only for cheaper and more durable strings. So that string is very good when you play good when you have heavy racket. Okay, this is the main revolution brought by the graphite racket. Okay. Then if you go to the next point, so I would say there are a lot of combinations actually. It's easy to get lost. Okay, between height size, strings, flexibility, shaft design, beam size, section, weight, or stringing pattern. So how to pick up the right specifications to find the best racket. Because if you take the wrong specification, it could even decrease the player's performances. Okay, so you have to know your student and where you want to go. So what are your objectives? What are your student strengths or weaknesses? Okay, as yourself which racket will make your student work correctly, and what's your vision in terms of swing, footwork, game style, spin, etc. And once you know this information for your student, you can pick up the right specification. But it's not easy to know because, of course, if some specification will make your student improve his or her skills in having an adapted racket, it's not easy. But you can. I mean, I'm telling you that it could even accelerate the process and make your players a better player. Of course, some rackets cannot match all the needs in details. Okay, it's not easy. This is why, and this is where the customizer job starts using specification data. Okay, we take some racket, some specific specifications, and then the customizer can adapt this specification to your student needs. Okay, so I think this is all for me. It was a kind of short resume of the racket and the industry and what kind of features you have to understand and to know to analyze your products. And it's time now to speak about customization, and I give the ball to Dieter, who is probably the best in the world to make the best racket for you guys. Dieter.
Hi guys. next guy to talk after Guillaume. Thanks, Guillaume, for the nice presentation. Here on this slide, you will see some special pictures because, as you know, the racket factories, most of them are in China. They have mass production, so they cannot, let's say, for professional need, it's difficult for them to make the perfect racket. Here, you know, everybody knows when you buy 3 rackets, they are not the same. So basically, professional players, the racket have to be perfect. So you can see here some pictures. You know, we can cut the frames. You know, with me, the frames come in longer. We have to cut them. We can change the grip shape. We can change the weight, the swing weight, and so. So yeah, Guillaume, next slide. Here, for example, is a picture how a customizer, you know, let's say a certain player, he played for years with Wilson and he changed his brand. Basically, if he likes the new racket and he doesn't like the grip shape, we can do whatever what. Yeah, we can design a new handle on his hand. We can copy, for example, a Wilson shape on the head racket by making a mold which is designed in a computer. This is very important, as some players they change brands during their career. Yep. Okay. So here in the customizing, the one thing we need is when rackets come in, for example, a batch of 6 rackets for a certain player, we need to test them out if they're all the same stiffness. You know, if a racket has to be 68 stiffness, we always going to do plus or minus 1. We allow. If it's more than plus or minus 1. I think we're giving the racket back to the manufacturer because I think the players, they feel it. Yeah. Sorry, but I hear some noise in my microphone. Okay, it's gone. Yeah. Here, next picture, you see there's a big problem by sticking the lead tape at the side of the racket at 3 and 9. So we always try to hide the lead tape at the top under the plastic bumper. But for more stability, for example, with players who play a little bit more flat, you know, and the racket cannot twist, we place lead tape at the sides. And you can see this with Novak Djokovic's racket. There are certain ways to stick it, but of course you have to degrease the racket very well. So in order the lead tape sticks very good because the ball can touch it. And so there are certain ways, but this sometimes, yes, you see on television, you cannot hide. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. The best thing to customize rackets, yes, let's say the best way is first to get it done in practice. Why? In practice, the player is not nervous. You can take the perfect conditions because when we customize rackets, most important, the first tests are done inside. We don't want too many parameters to change, you know, the sun, the heat, the wind, the surface. So for me, it's important to test out on a slower court inside so you don't have the climate influences. Why a slower court? Because on a fast court, the ball comes in fast and flies back also fast. So then you have less feeling what the racket does. So basically the first tests are always done indoors on a slow surface as possible. Yeah. Then of course we talk to the player, maybe one slide back. Yeah, you can keep it. It's okay, Guillaume, you can keep the slide. So basically we talk to the player because every player is different. Yeah. The performance for the player is the useful weight maneuverability. Yeah. And here is a big problem. Yes. The player, he always asking for both. He wants enough power and he wants enough control. And the second thing is most of the time the forehand is contradictory to the backhand. Yeah. Sometimes you have more example, a very fast swinging forehand, which is the case with a lot of players, and the backhand is a more guiding backhand. So this we need to really see on the court in practice. Yeah. Okay. I think everybody knows, I mean, many of the coaches who are listening here, you have had light, even balanced, head heavy rackets, but there's a big misunderstanding lately about this. Yeah, you. So here you see, for example, a balanced racket. You have a little bit of weight placed, let's say some silicone in the handle and maybe some lead tape at the top. Yeah. So, but you have the weight, you have the balance, but the most important thing is the swing weight. Yeah. If you compare this to next slide, yeah, you, yeah, you can see here, the lead tape has been placed a little bit higher. So this will get the racket a little bit more difficult. The swing weight, sorry, gets higher. The racket is harder to handle. If you can handle, it will give more power. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, one more. Okay. So here you see, for example, a lower balance, yes, and a heavier racket. Yeah. Now today, if you look at the evolution, yeah, it's important to know you can have the same weight, the same balance, and a different swing weight. Okay, if you think along with me, let's say you place 10 grams here on the bridge of the racket. Okay, let's say if you put the 5 grams at the bottom and the other gram at the top, this means you have still the same weight, you have still the same balance, but the racket is harder to handle. And this is a misunderstanding for many coaches. You can have indeed the same weight, the same balance, and a different swing weight. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. Not everybody, of course, has machines to measure the swing weight. I mean, the machines are quite expensive. Some sport shops, they have it. So basically, I think many coaches can go to a sport shop and check the swing weight. Yes. If not, I'm not going to explain the formula, but there's a quite easy formula to do. Yes. It's here, you can see it. So you can calculate the swing weight yourself. Yeah. And then I think on less than 2%, you will be exactly the same as the result of a machine measuring the data. Yeah. So for persons who don't have the swing weight machines, here to calculate the swing weight yourself. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here we have a small, let's say, slide. Yes. To explain coaches if the swing weight is light, medium, or heavy. Yeah. For lighter swing weight, the winning shots at the front and low balls. Why the low balls? Today in tennis, it's very important. You have to change the direction of the racket when you swing out. Yes, at the end of your swing, today you have to be able to change the direction. And with heavy rackets from before, it's impossible. So today, low balls, and you want to hit it in the court, you want to close the racket like, how do you say it, like, let's say like a car, you know, how do you say it in English? The windscreen wiper, you want to really close the racket. Yeah. You need a lighter swing weight. For cross courts, yes, and returns. Today, the return has become very, very important. I think the most important shot. If the racket is too heavy, yes, you cannot react on time. So today we see lighter and lighter swing weights because the return needs to be in the court. You use a medium swing weight for serves and volleys. And this is, of course, contradictory to the lighter swing weight. You know, some players, they want light swing weight for the forehand, for the returns. And then they say to me, oh, yes, but for my volleys, I need stability. The swing weight has to be higher. And so we need to look for a compromise. Yes. And then the heavier swing weight, most of the players for the ground strokes, if you can handle, of course, if you have some time, you play a little bit further behind the baseline, the ground strokes can use a heavier swing weight. This is a basic slide, okay, which you can use if you guide some of your students. Yeah. Next one.
Dieter, it's also interesting to remind guys that also the mental skills are very important to know because obviously the players' reactions can be different at the end of the matches, and we have to adapt the racket to help the players to play in the money time.
That's true, huh? Because it's a good remark of Guillaume today. You can have customizing a racket, and the first 50 minutes it's very good, yes. And the players, but for, let's say, for less big players, you need to hold the racket like 4 or 5 hours, maybe 5, 6 matches a day. So be careful if you adapt a racket of one of your students. Think also that the racket has to be good in long matches also. Yes, because this is a mistake many people make. They make the racket too heavy, and then after 1 hour and a half, 2 hours of match, they can see the fatigue of the player. Yeah. So be aware. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So be aware if you go on court with the player. Yeah. Today, you have to think about certain things. The game gets faster and faster. The player are stronger and stronger. Serve and returns are crucial, and there is less time to react. especially for the forehand, the forearm explosivity, look at Nadal, is mandatory. So today, I think many players, they play 70% forehand, 30% backhand. So if you customize on court, you do testing, it's very important you go along with the forehand first. This has to be perfect. Yes, the forehand is the most important thing in customizing. And then we need to compromise for all the other shots. Yeah. And then here I have to go a little faster because I think Guillaume took a little bit of my time, but he's excused. Okay, I'm not going to read all this slide. This slide is basic information for the coach. You know, if, for example, a player needs better stability, you can look at the column at the right. If he needs more power, you can have a higher swing weight, 16 main strings. I think this slide is quite good and will be used a lot. You know, if a player on court asks you something, yes, you just take a look at the left and the solution you can find in the right. Yeah, maybe along the way, we're going to make this slide a little bit more, let's say, longer, a little bit more detailed, but this you can always mail us for more information. This is one of my topics. I was lucky to be formed by one of the two main establishers for mini tennis in Europe. Maybe I cannot say the names right now, but the two guys are very important because they established the, let's say, the characteristics of the stage 1, stage 2 balls in tennis Europe. Yeah, that is why it's very important the transition between junior to senior racket, and that's why I said to Guillaume, listen, let's do a small case study how you can grow with a racket today. And there's some big misunderstanding. Yeah, next slide. Today, we made here on the slide, you can see a very easy, when a kid certain height, which type of racket, how long it has to be. And today, you cannot take an adult racket when the kid is less than 1.44 meters. For me, it's even better. You start on the adult racket at 1.50 meters. Yes. I don't advise when they're smaller to get an adult racket. So a 27-inch racket only from 1.50 meters, in my opinion. And this was also studied with many players all over Europe. So the guy who helped me out, he's also giving the material in the Flemish Federation. He came up with this, and this is used really all over the world. Okay, what was very important for me and Guillaume is how you could choose the racket for the kids, because there's a big misunderstanding concerning kids' rackets. On the left side, beneath, in pink, you see a full aluminum racket. And just next to it, it's a composite racket. You know, it's graphite aluminum. So you don't have to be scared today. Yeah. Till 23-inch, you can use a full aluminum racket. You know, sometimes when kids are very talented, and they attend the top of the top sport federation, or they play aluminium. So don't be scared, as long it's the red ball, stage 3, stage 2 orange balls, it's even better to play with an aluminium or composite frame. Because sometimes when you cut a graphite frame, it creates too much power on the small court. Yeah? So don't be scared, aluminium is not bad. The ball is very soft, orange and red balls are very soft. The shock impact is not very hard. So please, till 23-inch, don't be scared to use that type of frame. Next slide. The story is different when you start with the green balls, because the green ball, let's say, has almost the same weight as a normal ball, but it's a little bit flatter, but the shock impact becomes very big. So here you need a full graphite frame. On the left, you see an unfinished graphite frame. It's nice to see. They still have to slide the epoxy off. That's why they cannot make it on 1 gram. And maybe on the right, we just showed a padel racket because it's interesting to see the basic is graphite, and in the middle you have foam, but then you can recognize the structure of a graphite racket. So graphite is important when you play with green balls. So for the best kids, it's better to play through graphite. If it's a little bit, let's say, a kid who plays 1 hour a week, we allow composite, okay, then for me, it's fine. But for talented kids who want to become really, really good, be sure to use graphite. Yeah. And you can only start a full adult racket from 1.44 m. For me, in my opinion, 1.50 m. Yeah, because many kids, they start too early with full adult rackets. Yeah, maybe a little bit more, Guillaume, the slide. Yeah. So what are the characteristics of a full racket, of a, let's say, an adult racket? It has to be 67.5 or 68.5 centimeter. 68.5 is the normal adult, but some brands, they make now rackets in between 26 and 27 inch, which I use a lot. It's very important, yeah, because don't forget, from 26 inch to 27 inch is very, very long. Yeah, so not many kids can handle it. Yeah. The frame has to be at least 60 stiffness, RA, 100% graphite, and 100 square inch. And here many coaches, I think, make a mistake. Oh, it's too big. No, but if you look at the picture at the right, an ice skater, when he wants stability, he's going to open the arms. Yeah? When he wants to turn around fast, when he wants to become unstable, he's going to close the arms. With the racket, it's basically the same. Yeah? 100 square inch has a better torsion stability than a 95 square inch. And this is where many coaches make a mistake. Yeah? So please try to use 100 square inch minimum. Of course, the weight, I think many people will know, between 255 to 65 grams, 33 balance. Don't be scared to use 33 balance, because now in many coaches' opinion, higher than 32 is a mistake, but it's not. You know, the racket is very light, so there has to be some effective mass, the mass working against the ball on the racket. So 33 balance is not too high for a first kids racket. And the grip between 0 and 1. Round section, remember, Guillaume, when you talk about rackets, you have the head prestige, very thin and square. And let's say you have the racket of Nadal. For kids, of course, first time on a big court, please use the bigger round section rackets to create more power. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, here is a really slide. I can be very short. Yeah. The difference between multifilament and monofilaments, but Guillaume already discussed about that. I'm not going to explain, I think, once again. The power between the strings is quite, let's say, equal, but the trajectory of the strings is very different. Multifilaments and monofilaments are completely different. Take a look at the slide. I think it will explain itself. Choosing the right grip, there's a big discussion about that. So here it's very easy. You take the second line, the horizontal line on the hand. This is where the hand is bending in the middle, and then you take towards the ring finger. Yeah, I think it's a good word. Yes, ring finger. Yeah. And if you have this length, then you can look at the right side to see the grip size. You will see that many people have grip 5, 4, but you can always go down 2 units. That's no problem. So basically, let's say you have your 11.1 centimeter or 4.38 inches. Yes, sorry, 11.1 centimeter. You can take size 3, but you can go down to 2 and 1. Yes, don't go down 3 categories, because then the finger will be completely, the hand will be completely closed and the racket will start to have more torsion. Very easy to choose the right grip size, because the finger in between the hand is kind of ridiculous, because a guy who works in construction, his finger is much bigger than, for example, a small kid's finger. So that's why it's better to use this slide to determine the grip size. Yeah.
All right. So this is basically the specification for the racket. So maybe, Dieter, can you give us some examples of the ATP and WTA players you experienced in the past or even currently, to explain what are the professional trends of today?
Okay, the trends, why did we not fill in this slide? I think it's better, we cannot give all the data for all the players. Some managers, they don't want to. On the other hand, on the stringing sides, you can measure sometimes yourself, but okay, we decided here. But mainly it's very easy. The rackets become lighter and lighter. Okay? Why? Because the players have to react faster and they want to swing faster in the forehand, because the first ingredient for power is the quickness of your swing and not the weight of the racket. So today, players play lighter and lighter. Yes. The balance, be aware, is getting a little bit higher. For example, the blade, the K blade of the Wilson was one of the first rackets, 32.5 balance. It's not nothing, but why? If the balance is a little bit higher, it means that the racket is stable during impact and the mass is working against the ball. And if you can combine this with a low swing weight, you have all the advantages. A low swing weight to swing really fast, but if the swing weight is low and the balance is too low, the racket, the impact becomes unstable. So today I can see a small evolution of lighter rackets, a little bit more head heavy, let's say between 31.8 and 32.8 balance, and the swing weights become lower and lower. For example, I can give you some. Luca Puy, I do him, his rackets, he plays 302 swing weight. It's not high. Fernando Verdasco plays 285 swing weight. You know, with all the top girls like Kleisters, Swiatek, they don't play with swing weights higher than 300. Okay, so this is an evolution, yeah. And of course, there you see a little bit difference between men and women. The men, they still play with square rackets, but let's say the Prestige is a little bit, I don't want to be negative, old-fashioned, because now the square rackets are a little bit bigger. The beam has gotten bigger than the, for example, the Prestige. And with the women, you see a little bit more the round section frames because they want even more power than the men. So, but here I would say this slide, if you want information, feel free to give us a small email. We are not scared to, let's say, to tell you, yes, but it's difficult to get all the player specs, yeah, for too many people. Some people, I don't think they will like it. Yeah.
All right, thank you for your attention. Thank you, Dieter. I hope we could help you to improve and to understand your racket and the customization and all the specifications to make your players better. This is a real science. Everybody is interested, but we heard a lot of sometimes wrong information. Or so this is I think this presentation could help you to better understand the principles of the racket and strings. So obviously, if you need more information, you've got our contact details. Please do not hesitate to contact us. We'll be more than happy to help you and to give you more tips.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Dieter. It was a very extensive presentation. I always say that coaches has to learn more about the evolution of the racket. You know, there's many things that you have to learn. If you see in my back, I have a collection of rackets.
I see.
Nice one.
1880 to 1980. 100 years of rackets in my collection. You know why, Dieter and Guillaume?
Yeah.
I started in Indian Wells, 1998. I discovered a meeting of collectors, American collectors of tennis industry. I realized, like a tennis coach, how poor was my knowledge about the evolution of the racket. That's why the way I started my collection, you know. And now this is my studio. But by the way, I think in terms of the future of the tennis coaches for all over the world have to understand more the materials, more the connection between the player, the game, and the evolution of all the tennis rackets, elements, strings, as you mentioned. And I know you can talk by hours and days about it. You know, yeah. This is a small presentation. Coaches, let's have a contact with Guillaume, with Dieter, are the best on the world on that, and we keep in touch. Thank you in the name of World Tennis Conference and the name of GTPTCA and Segal Institute for your presentation.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you very much.